your host. And we are here today with both General Motors and HiredScore to talk about how General Motors delivers the future of recruiting. Incredibly excited. I'll introduce our speakers and my co-host here in a moment. But as I've always shared for this webinar series over the past 3 years, the reason we do this is for our customers. Customers are one of our big core values. We also want to make it fun. So bring in a drink on a happy hour Wednesday is a good option too, or bring your lunch if you happen to be on the West Coast to try to make it a little fun, to break up your week on that hump day. So it is created for you. It's about you. If you happen to be somebody who's excited about something that you're doing that surrounds or connects to Workday in some way, feel free to reach out to me directly. I'll put my email in the chat here momentarily, but it's tom.holtz@workday.com. We are going to have another 10 of these in our new fiscal year, which starts February 1st. So we typically do the third Wednesday of the month. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump in, introduce the team that's with me today in our agenda. So I'm kicking it off. I'll pass it to Eileen, the amazing Eileen, who's with us today from GM. And then we're going to have Jason from HiredScore talk to us a little bit more about how great Workday can be with HiredScore and Workday together as our customers are leveraging those. I don't think we're going to talk much about future, but please make your buying decisions based on what's in the core product today, whether it's Workday or HiredScore. So I introduced myself. Really excited to bring Eileen together along with Jason from GM and HiredScore. And just want to thank Jason and his team. They've been amazing helping pull this together. So we're incredibly excited to have him as well. But Eileen is our fearless global talent acquisition leader, 25 years of experience in that role, focusing on team development strategy and global transformation. She is, as it says, a certified post-crisis leader and solution implementer. She does a great job of partnering with HR business leaders and executives across the business. And currently, she is the global head of candidate engagement at GM, leading the creation and rollout of global TA processes, tools, metrics, and initiatives. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it to Eileen, but I'm also going to encourage you to post questions in the Q&A that I will happily raise to Eileen at any point during this session. I will interrupt her. This is meant to be conversational and throw some questions at her. In addition, if you want to comment, tell us how great this is, feel free to post that in the chat as well. And if you have questions later for Jason, feel free to fire those up as well. So without further ado, again, thank you, Eileen, for being with us.
You're so welcome. And thank you for that really amazing intro. I hope I can live up to it. So as Tom said, my role at General Motors is really focusing on candidate experience. When I joined the organization in 2021, we had some really big tasks ahead of us, and optimizing the way we recruit and the way we talent acquisition was one of them. So I'm going to talk about some of the challenges that we were facing. We implemented Workday as our HCM in 2020, and then we said, now what? Right? So now what do we do? On average, we receive over 1 million applications per year. So as you can imagine, I'm sure there are plenty of talent acquisition practitioners on this webinar, that makes it really difficult to effectively review and evaluate top talent, right? When you have that many applications, it gets really, really difficult to prioritize who you're going to speak to and who you're going to look at first. We realized very quickly we were wasting millions of candidates, right? Because they were just kind of coming into a black hole. It was really difficult for us to be able to go through in a timely manner and say, yeah, this is top talent, based on the transformation that we had to support with the organization, which was transitioning from a internal combustion engine company to a tech company focusing on EV and AV vehicles. And so when we think about it this way, receiving over 1 million applications in Workday Recruiting, we needed a way to be able to resurface that. So we hire about 20,000 candidates a year, which if you can do some back of the napkin math, it's about 980,000 applications that essentially just go to waste, right? They were just sitting there. They were given a no, candidate received a disposition as no, no, thank you. And that was it. And so two things really jumped out to all of us within TA, and it's these 980 plus thousand candidates that are applying and being rejected every year aren't necessarily bad candidates. They may
Right.
have applied to the wrong role. They may have been too junior. They may still be great candidates, but not for that particular position. Or we may have just been so far down the process by the time that they applied that we missed that window, right? And so what do we do there? Also, these candidates are currently or are potential customers. And so we had a brand that we had to consider as well. And so as a company, we were really challenging ourselves to look at TA differently, right? We had to be able to become experts in different skill sets that we weren't used to hiring. And we had to be able to meet GM's strategic objective of being able to fulfill a zero emissions pipeline. And so we really had to also make sure that we were elevating our recruiters to become subject matter experts and strong, essentially strong performers right off the bat, right? We needed a way for our recruiters to be able to identify top talent quickly, review them, speak to them, qualify, and get them in front of the hiring manager. And not have this continuous waste in the system. So I don't know if you want to flip to the
Yeah, I
next
can. I'll
slide.
tell you, I'll just comment. I mean, I couldn't even fit all those people in my Yukon Excel. I mean, it's crazy. A lot of,
Yeah,
it's a
it's
lot of
hard.
people. It's a lot of people, and we can fit a lot in that thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's you know, I mean, obviously, major shift in your business, and it's an exciting challenge, right? To you know, to try to tackle. So tell us more about what you've been doing lately.
Yeah. Um, absolutely. So I guess let me tell you a little bit about our tech stack because it's really interesting. I mean, if I go back to 1990 something when I started recruiting, we didn't have any of this, right? I remember my very first recruiting job, I was handed a phone book, a pad, and a pencil. And they were like, here you go be a recruiter. So it's very, very different now. It's really interesting to have been here and have experienced the entire industry changing. But as I said earlier, so we implemented Workday first. Workday is our core HCM. It's our system of record. It's our gold source. We use it for, obviously, we use Workday Recruiting. That is what our recruiters are in and day out. And in 2021, we said, okay, what's next? Now we need to optimize. And so we identified a couple of key partners that were going to be the cornerstone of our tech strategy. HiredScore being one of them, Paradox being another, and looking at the different functionality, we said, how can we augment how our recruiters work and make them even more efficient and give them back time so that we wanted them spending their time with candidates, right? And talking to candidates and hiring managers, building those relationships, not having to like sift through tons of applications. We really wanted to make sure that we were pinpointing where they should be reviewing. So after moving to Workday, again, bought a couple of products and we took a step back and said, okay, all of these things are going to add value, but what is going to be the one thing that can bring immediate value that we can stand up? And so we all aligned that HiredScore was going to be the first partner tool, right, that we went live with. And that was because we saw the value of being able to help recruiters prioritize what they should have on their plate or how they should be prioritizing the candidates in their candidate bucket. And we saw that as the best possible win, quick win. So I'm not, by no means am I saying, right, like you shouldn't go and implement a bunch of stuff. because we did, right? In addition to these tools, we also stood up a brand new career site. We implemented a brand new CRM. We did a lot of stuff in 2021, but it was really critical. And the one message that I would say for anybody that I speak to is prioritize where you think you're going to get some immediate ROI and some immediate relief to the end user. And that was kind of what drove the decision to stand up HiredScore first, right? It was something immediate where we could recognize some significant impact for our recruiting team.
That's great. That's great. I have a couple of questions coming in, so I'm going to hit you with them.
Sure.
So, question from Jay: does GM have the concept of evergreen recs, and if so, how are you dealing with those today in Workday?
We do have evergreen recs, a lot of evergreen recs. So that concept hasn't changed. We typically use evergreens when we have high volume or very, very similar skill sets across maybe several hiring managers within a group, and it doesn't make sense to just post sporadically. In order to really get the most out of this investment, it's critical that those roles are similar, right? Because we're looking at how do we evaluate and prioritize the candidates that we want to spend the most time with. And so we do use them, right, when it makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then, yeah, I'm just curious, can you tell a little bit about like before you did these updates to your stack, like what did it look like? What were your existing solutions like? Did you replace anything or improve anything? Can you tell us a
Yeah,
bit about kind of where you were and versus where
sure.
you were?
So that is the easiest question to answer because we had nothing.
Okay.
So there was nothing to replace. This was all brand new. We had migrated from multiple systems across payroll and personnel and performance and recruiting, consolidated to Workday, and then everything else is gravy, right? We didn't have a CRM, we didn't have an AI chatbot, we didn't have a tool that helped with orchestration. It was here's our career site and here's our ATS, and that was it.
Got it. No, that's great. Yeah, and once you start asking a couple questions, they start flowing in. So I'm going to hit you with a couple more
Sure.
before we move on. Old friend of mine, I think, is still at J&J. Mark, are your recruiters doing their day-to-day candidate management in HiredScore or Workday? Or tell us a little bit more about sort of how you're handling candidate management.
Yeah. So it's an interesting question because it has two different answers. So I would say both. When we first went live, we said, okay, you can use HiredScore this way, right? Where you're going into the platform and you're getting all those great insights, which is honestly one of my favorite things about the tool. If I were a recruiter, I mean, that's what I love about it, is that it's clear as day. It's showing you exactly why this candidate meets or does not meet the requirements. But then we also have the grading and scoring pulled into the candidate grid in Workday. So the recruiters could use it either way. We strongly recommend to our recruiters that they're reviewing in the candidate grid and then going into Workday to even drill down, because as we're not adding value as a talent acquisition partner if we're sending 25 or 30 candidates to a hiring manager to review. So the recommendation is always that the recruiter should review in Workday and then flip over to HiredScore and do their review, and they can do their mass disposition and whatnot in there. Because it does have those extra insights. It also helps when you're talking to your hiring managers that you can go in and articulate, here's the top three, right? I'm ad-libbing this. Here's the top 3 or 5 candidates I'm recommending, and here's why.
Makes sense. Total sense. All right, one last one, sort of a variation on that, or a break off of that. Is another question on candidate pools. Do you use Workday's candidate pools to create all or at all to create potential future recruits, even if they don't meet the criteria for a current requisition?
So we do not today. We do have our CRM, so HiredScore can pull in from Workday and from our CRM, but we are not using the pooling in Workday.
Got it. Cool. And Lauren, we'll get to your question a little bit around sort of specifics around HiredScore, but let's, do you want me to advance to the next slide?
Yeah, sure.
Here we go.
All right, so why did we choose to implement HiredScore? This is probably going to feel a lot like I'm reading the slide, but I'm reading the slide. So first things first, we needed to empower our recruiters to be able to make decisions faster, right? And prioritize top talent. That was key. And like probably the single biggest thing was we need to get to the top talent fast, and we need to be able to prioritize that. We need faster time to status. I'm sure every candidate or every company has experienced reading reviews on whether it was Glassdoor or Reddit that, hey, I went into the black hole. We needed to make sure that we were mitigating those types of comments, because again, every single candidate is also a customer. And so we were very concerned about ensuring that our brand was protected. We wanted to enhance hiring efficiency. We wanted our recruiters to be able to very quickly go to a hiring manager and say, here's the top 3 or 5 candidates, and here's why I believe that you should speak to these individuals. We wanted them to have, again, these kind of go together, but to be able to have easy and effective communications with their stakeholders. So whether it was a hiring team or an HRBP or whoever was probing, right? We wanted our recruiters to have some easy facts where they could just take that information and say, here's why, right? Here's the why. And this was, for me, one of the things that I was most excited about is that rediscovery. I don't know any company that, doesn't have a bajillion candidates in their systems, right? We have our own mega databases. Every company has them that you build and you cultivate. And we really wanted to focus on exactly what we had, right? We wanted to be able to go back and rediscover all of that high value talent that we already knew, that were already interested in General Motors, because that's half the battle, right? Is getting somebody interested in your company.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's fantastic. And in some ways, and we'll get to some of these, there's a couple of HiredScore questions that I'll pass to Jason a little bit, most likely. But, to me, it's like using HiredScore is kind of like putting your Goodyear tires on your Yukon, right? You got to, bring some of the best brands together. But yeah, so, no, that's awesome. So I'm going to jump, I think, hopefully I didn't jump too soon. Go to the next
Nope,
slide.
you're good. So the main ways that we wanted to enhance our recruiter productivity so we wanted to enhance our recruiter productivity, but we didn't want to increase headcount. That was probably the number one directive we had. Make this better, make our recruiters more efficient, make us more productive, but we're not adding in 20, 30, 40, 50 recruiters to the organization. And so we needed a solution that was really going to help us pivot. And so HiredScore checked the box for us for that, right? So we have over 150 recruiters supporting GM that are leveraging the recruiter, I think it's called Recruiter Coach AI. And they can now swiftly pinpoint the candidates that they should be focusing on, which is great. So we've checked the box there, right? We wanted to increase productivity and give the recruiters a way to help put the top candidates right in front of them. Consequently, instead of searching for a needle in a haystack, we also wanted to basically hand our recruiters the needle. So again, we've got, probably not unique, most companies have their ATS and they have some sort of a CRM. We implemented with HiredScore to be able to basically pull out of both. So our recruiters are also leveraging that fetch functionality that can go grab and rediscover talent. And so it's looking at existing applicants, it's looking at candidates that expressed interest, maybe joined our talent community, or they may have I don't know, met us at a conference or some type of networking event and, gave us their information. And so we wanted a way to go in and pull those candidates out and say, like, here's some individuals that meet the requirements that are already interested, right? They already know the brands, they already want to work here, which is great. So that was a big one. We also wanted to elevate the recruiter experience. And so we needed a way to remove the bottlenecks and find, I don't know, I guess a more efficient way for our recruiters to engage. If you put your recruiter hat on, I know for me, it gets really overwhelming when you're a recruiter and you have 40, 50 recs that you're responsible for managing, and you have hundreds of candidates that are applying to these recs or being referred to these recs, whether it's through employee referral program or, they met a hiring manager at Carvel and exchanged information. It gets really overwhelming when you're trying to prioritize and get candidates to hiring managers, screen them, keep your candidates happy and feeling like, they are getting the white glove treatment, but also your hiring managers are screaming because they want their recs filled. And so we really needed to elevate that experience for the recruiters as well and arm them or give them a tool that was going to help them not only prioritize, but also rediscover what we already had.
Yeah, makes total sense. One quick question, easy one, I think. Lauren's asking about, as you shared a bit about what you're doing with HiredScore, do you use the internal talent mobility capability that they have?
We don't today.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't. So we have a philosophy at GM where we don't poach our internal talent. If somebody internal applies and they're interested, that's great. But as a rule of thumb, we won't go poach internally.
Got it. Cool.
So really there were two main outcomes that we were looking to achieve. First, we wanted to turbocharge our recruitment team, and we've achieved that. The equivalent of, I think it's like 10 or 11 headcount, basically, by implementing this tool. So we were able to reduce so much time. I think it was like 22 or 23,000 hours that we saved. It equates out to like 11 full-time headcount, just by helping our recruiters prioritize who they should be reaching out to first. What we've found is that the prioritized candidates are 2 times more likely to get to the offer stage, which is pretty incredible when you think about it. And then the scoring and matching functionality, coupled with prioritizing, it actually, so what we've looked at, I think it was over the course of a year, looking at that on average, that the recruiters really only had to review about the top 30% of the candidates, because the matching and the AI was so strong, because it continues to learn, right? The brain continues to learn, that if we're just focusing on the top 30%, we're going to get to a hire. Which really, when you think about that, is pretty incredible, because can you actually flip back?
Yep. Sorry about that. I'm getting
So that's pretty incredible, right? Huge reduction in time. The other piece of this was kind of the proactive and automated sourcing from existing. So what we found was that in 2023, 80% of the requisitions that we filled were actually covered by existing talent, meaning that talent was already in either our ATS and our CRM. I venture to bet we probably would not have gotten all of those, that 80%. We would not have rediscovered all of those candidates. We never would have been able to get to that number. 92% of our fetch recommendations were actually past applicants from Workday. So think about that, right? You have candidates, a lot of candidates, they may apply to multiple positions. And depending on the timing, when the rec is posted, you never know if you're going to get to that person. But 92% of the fetch candidates that came back were already past applicants. And so that was a really strong message. And we strongly recommend to our recruiters that we are prioritizing how we're reviewing, so that, because we could see in there, right? You can see how many recs that a candidate applied to. We want to make sure you're focusing on candidates that are a strong match, but also giving a white glove experience. We've also found that our re-engaged candidates were 8 times more likely to apply versus any other sourcing channel. So somebody that's expressed interest, maybe was rejected, that was re-engaged, was 8 times more likely to actually go and apply versus I'm just out on a job board and I find Tom and I call Tom and tell him about a job and say, hey, I'm going to send you a link to this job. Can you apply to it? Maybe you'll do it, maybe you won't. And so that was pretty incredible as well. And the leads that we were engaging with applied to, on average, about 4 jobs after being invited to apply. So that one fetch candidate who was applying to a job that we reached out to them about after they were already previously rejected was not only applying to that job, but was looking at several other jobs and expressing interest in those. So now you're taking your previously rejected candidate, you're getting them excited about another opportunity, and you continue to improve that engagement because now they're continuing to search for other jobs in addition to the one that you told them about. And so imagine doing that over and over and over again, right? That's pretty incredible
Yeah, I
ROI.
mean, it's phenomenal. I mean, I love this slide and just the efficiency that you've created that wasn't there before. I mean, obviously, I think it's funny. One of my very, very, very good friends, actually, my wife's best friend, is a VP of talent acquisition, and has been at multiple companies. And so this stuff just fascinates me. And it's kind of how this all came together with me running into HiredScore at Rising and
Mm-hmm.
starting up this conversation and teeing you up. So,
Yeah.
uh, I mean, I think the data speaks for itself, right? So it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Like, you know what I love about this? Like, this is what I think about when I look at this slide. I'm sure everybody who's in attendance today has heard like the phrase, it's who you know, right? It's not what you know, it's who you know. And that networking is so strong. And so we've actually kind of empowered the candidate now and the recruiter, because they know us, we know they know us, we want to know them, and we're now creating this loyalty to a brand because they're constantly re-engaged, and they feel like, hey, I know someone there, like you know what I
Right.
mean, not
No,
literally.
for sure. No, for sure. It's cultivating all of those people that are there. And that's, like you said at the beginning, that's like you can't waste that, right? I mean, that's a ton of people, like you said, what, 1 million people. And if you don't cultivate it, they'll go somewhere else,
Yeah,
right? And there is, as every single analyst out there is talking about, there's this, competition and war for talent, whatever words you want to use. And so it's important. There's a reason they came to you. So it's awesome.
for sure. So this is one of my favorite stories. I tell this story all the time, and this is really kind of bringing the whole thing together, right? This is how I share the story internally when I'm talking to stakeholders about our tech stack, or if I'm sharing updates with our recruiting team. This is one of my favorite stories to tell. It's a super easy narrative. We had a candidate that applied to a rec last February in our EV program. Those candidates are really hard to come by. They are top talent. They're sought after by all of our competitors. And so it's really, really critical, especially as we are enabling the business transformation, that we don't lose sight of top talent. So this candidate was rejected for whatever reason. April of last year, a similar rec opened up, totally different, but similar in nature. Opened up middle of May, couple of weeks later. This fetch lead was contacted by the recruiter. Candidate was super excited, applied the very next day to that new requisition, about 3 months after they applied to the original requisition. And on July 27th, they started with us. So if that doesn't tell that story, and we have so many of these stories. I mean, we probably could have filled up, 25 slides of just this example where candidate applied, was rejected, was re-engaged, and quickly made it through the process. And I think if you look at the total timeline, like from April to July, even that timeline is so much shorter than what a typical recruiting process is, because you're able to re-engage existing talent. I would venture to bet if the fetch candidate was not one of the 4 running candidates, this rec probably wouldn't have filled as quickly as it did.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome. Oh my gosh. All kinds of questions rolling in. Thank you everyone for the great questions. So I'm going to hit you with a couple. I'm going to challenge you a little bit with a couple of the tougher ones. So first off, how did you get legal and compliance teams around or on board with regard to using the AI elements? Did you get any resistance? How are you ensuring candidates understand AI may be used in their evaluation process? Jess, great question. What do you think, Eileen?
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate. We have a fantastic legal and compliance team. They are always willing to work with us and make sure that they understand what we're trying to do. So they lead with a yes, which I think is probably, it's a little bit unique in my experience. So they were very willing to listen and understand. But also, I think HiredScore has been a fantastic partner in this perspective because so I'll give you an example. New York State implemented a new law recently saying that you can't use AI in the evaluation process. And we were able to partner with HiredScore to say, okay, any candidate where the job is either in New York, I think it was New York City, actually, New York City, or the candidate lives in New York City, we need to be able to remove that information from the algorithm so that their recruiter can't see a score. Right. And they have to just review the resume. And we did that. Right. And so we met the requirements of our legal and compliance teams. HiredScore was able to operationalize that for us. And so from that perspective, that was great. But again, I think we're very fortunate that we've got fantastic partners on the legal and compliance side at GM. They are very open to hearing about all the things that we want to do and work with us to find a way to ensure that we can do those things and be more efficient and stay within the box.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Absolutely fantastic. All right, I'm gonna do 2 more, and then I'm watching the clock here, so we give some time to Jason. It's a number of questions around capabilities around HiredScore. I'll make sure that Jason hits on those. But another AI one, obviously a very hot topic over the last 6 to 12 months in particular, and just keeps getting hotter. But from Jay, did you test the AI for bias, or how was that tested? I guess it might be partly yours, it might be partly Jason's, I don't know, but and how it was offering up candidates.
You know what? I'm not even sure I can actually answer that question. Jason, I think you're probably better suited to speak to it.
Yeah, I can field that one for sure. Thanks, Eileen and Tom. And I'll present a little bit more later, but since we're in the flow, let's go with it. So HiredScore has obligations to test everything that we go live with for a customer. Part of that's our own ethics and compliance standards to meet. Nearly all of our customers are federal government contractors, and many are large global multinationals. So there's complex laws and various regions that we have to adhere to. I think the most important thing for the audience to understand, whether, again, you're looking at HiredScore evaluating any vendor, is making sure they're meeting and adhering to those laws and that they have those rigid standards themselves. So for us, Tom, Eileen doesn't have to think about this a lot because we do this for them. So we test our own algorithms. We actually publish this online on our website as well regarding our outputs. That's also part of the New York 144 law that vendors are required to publish those statistics online regarding the treatment of candidates relative to the algorithms. And then we have other obligations to make sure that any data we take that we don't learn from biases. So we certify that as part of the implementation process as well. So our compliance and ethics standards are sort of 30% of where we spend our executive time and energy. And that's, sort of trickles down to our customers, so they don't have to worry about it a lot. To the extent they need reports, information, we certainly support them in that entire process.
Awesome. No, that's perfect. Yeah, so why don't we round it out, Eileen? I think what do you have, one or two more, I think, slides?
I
Or
think
no,
that was actually it.
good. I think you're good. So I'm gonna hit you while Jason's teeing up. I'm gonna hit you with one or two more. So I'll stop
Okay, sure.
sharing, pass Jason the ball. I know you covered this a little earlier, but maybe Kate missed it. Tell us again about sort of your landscape. She's asking, what are you using for your CRM? There was another question around using data to, using HiredScore to analyze the data from Paradox and Workday. Did you find any time savings in reporting? So tell us a little bit more about your landscape, and then
Sure.
about sort of anything there around time savings and reporting, and using sort of the combination of Workday, HiredScore, and Paradox.
Yeah, sure. So our tech stack is, I have to say, I think it's amazing, right? So we've got Workday as our core system of record. We have HiredScore as our orchestration partner. We use Paradox for AI automation with interview scheduling, chatbot candidate experience, things like that. We have Beamery as our CRM. So HiredScore, like I said, is dipping into both Workday and Beamery. And I'm trying to think what else is like relevant in this tech stack. I think those are like the three big ones. So in terms of using the data, what's always really interesting, so what we do track really closely are fetch candidates, right? We're always reporting back out on a regular basis to our recruiting team in terms of how many fetch candidates were invited to apply, how many fetch candidates made it to interview, how many made it to offer, how many started. And we're constantly trying to beat that number. So the data that's coming out of HiredScore is helping our recruiters kind of hone in and perfect that process. When we look at Paradox, I mean, the functionality is different, right? We're leveraging Paradox in the recruiting process to schedule phone screens and interviews and things like that. So the data doesn't really go together, but again, this is helping us tell that broader story. And then as the candidates are prioritized, obviously the partnership with Paradox has helped us significantly reduce our time to schedule. So like we're overall like significantly reducing our time from application to hire, which has been pretty incredible. And then, Beamery it speaks for itself, right? We're able to look at how many candidates are coming in from different sources, how many are being re-engaged, we're able to nurture from there and whatnot. But we've I would say a pretty robust tech stack.
That's awesome. I think that's a perfect time to transition to Jason. I want to again thank Eileen from General Motors for being here with us. We'll keep you on because I'm sure you'll get some more questions. Most of the next 20 minutes is yours, Jason. I only ask that you leave me 2 minutes just to kind of close this at the end. And so please integrate Jen Fraser's question from Carter's about the scoring and matching process and how HiredScore prioritizes candidates. But the floor is yours. Thanks again, Jason, for being with us.
Thank you, Tom. And just confirming my screen showing okay?
Looks great.
All right, good. I almost feel bad taking the mic from Eileen. She's amazing. Thank you, Eileen, again for telling the GM story. You do it so well. I'll just give a quick background here on a couple things with HiredScore. We'll dive into a quick demo, and I'll try and integrate those answers as we go throughout. And Tom, keep an eye on the questions that they come in for me. HiredScore background: as an AI company, we've processed 1 billion candidate decisions. Typically, as Eileen mentioned, we're connected to multiple systems per customer. So in their case, that's their sort of Workday ATS, the CRM, and then we're contemplating some additional connections as part of the ongoing relationship. Live in all of their countries where recruiters are working. And we've been doing this for 10 years. I think one of the cool stories is that for 88% of clients, HiredScore is one of their first AI solutions. So we take a lot of pride in obviously delivering cutting edge innovation to our customers. Just because we are so supportive of our partnership with Workday, I did want to remind everybody we are a Workday Certified partner. That means our integration has been reviewed and signed off by Workday. And we are also one of the inaugural partners of their AI marketplace. So we're so excited about that because sort of a validation of not only great customers like Eileen, but Workday obviously reviewing and seeing the value of the HiredScore AI on top of their wonderful customer base. So if you can't tell, we love our partnership with Workday. With that said, what we look at though is as we work with customers, we are really system agnostic. So while many will have Workday, they will use various CRMs, VMSs. We connect across all those because our goal is at the end of the day to make the systems you use like Workday more successful. So our AI will sit on top of that. We'll even connect through a lot of platforms like Microsoft Teams and ultimately delivering a variety of use cases that complement the Workday platform. So at the end of the day, we're not a system of record. We're a system of orchestration that makes the systems you use more successful and make the people who use them smarter, faster, quicker. So if we're successful, as Eileen talked about, we're elevating your HR professionals to that highest performance status. We're giving quicker time to mastery for every HR role. The transformation agendas become possible with the AI to eliminate some of those typical change management hassles, and we unlock business personas without some of the traditional risks of installing a new system. So I'm going to kind of move a little quicker so we have some time for demo. When we talk about a recruiter with or without HiredScore on top of Workday, we're really talking about the idea of this exoskeleton. Tom, you mentioned you're at Goodyear, for instance. A lot of manufacturing companies for years have had the idea of exoskeletons in their factories where people are lifting things, thousands of times every single day. And so the idea is to protect them, make them more efficient. Knowledge workers like recruiters don't necessarily have their own exoskeletons. And so that's kind of the way we like to think of our AI on top of Workday. Workday is a great system. With the AI exoskeleton, it just means they're getting that harmonized data. They're getting that faster screening time. They can instantly rediscover candidates across their systems. They get a talent coach to remind them of key business priorities. They get smart alerts and nudges that can keep them aligned with business SLAs. So again, it's all the data in their systems. It's all the great infrastructure of Workday. The AI is just putting that back to work for the customer to deliver next generation productivity. And what a recruiter with the orchestration on top of Workday looks like is they have these the balance of that prioritization and rediscovery. They have the ability to align with business objectives, whether that's D&I alerts or SLA nudges. So I do want to get into some of how the scoring works and show the product, but just want to give you a vision a little bit of what this looks like. So I'm going to jump over to the product demo, and Tom, just keep an eye on those questions and the timing for me. So this should look familiar to all of our Workday friends. This is a Workday inbox, and so I'm live in a Workday just tenant here. And what you're seeing is for a requisition, if we click on something like review candidates, we'll see in a candidate inbox, the one thing that I want to show right off the bat is that HiredScore grade that Eileen referred to is embedded deeply within Workday. So we put that grade right inside the system and a custom link to the candidate. Now, when I click on, or if I grab that link, or if I want to click on that link, it'll take me to a corresponding inbox in HiredScore. So essentially, when I see a candidate record, this is a direct match to the Workday system, except what I'm getting on top of the Workday system is this rich explainability, and this is where our AI goes to work. So we're scoring every candidate relative to the rec for which they express interest. And Tom, going back to that compliance and bias concern, the way you treat candidates fairly is you make sure to score them relative to the rec for which they've expressed interest. So Felicity is an A. In this rec, she could be a D in another rec. So as many positions as they apply to in Workday, we'll score them for that exact position relative to the rec for which they're being considered. And then what we do is we provide these rich insights that help translate for a person what they want to focus on. So if they're getting, as Eileen mentioned, they have 40 recs on their desk, it's GM, they could easily have 100, 200 candidates per rec. How do they get the right people, not waste their time? So Felicity is an A. What does the AI like about her? The system will help her understand that, see what's embedded. And for the, I think Jen, who asked from Carter's, what it's essentially doing is taking the requisition, parsing that information. So it's extracting the skills, the experience, the seniority, any skills certifications that may be required for the requisition, And it's then taking the resume and the application data, parsing that. We have our own proprietary parser that works in over 70 languages. And essentially what it's doing is producing that grade. In simple terms, the grade is telling you how close in priority that person is to what the rec asked for. It's not telling a recruiter who to hire. It's not, you know, an assessment in a sense. It's just saying, okay, of all these candidates that applied, where do I focus first? A recruiter could end up hiring a C that they really love, no problem. But if they follow the A's and B's, as Eileen so carefully pointed out, they'll get typically to the people that extend offers and interviews that end up in interviews most commonly through following the grading. So the grading follows rec by rec, so they can easily prioritize. Recruiters, as Eileen mentioned, will typically save about 70% of their screening time when following the grades. And this mirrors Workday exactly. So if they look at their permissions, they're going to see the exact candidates requisitions they're assigned to based in Workday, and it follows their exact workflow in Workday. That's called a BP. So as we can see, as we follow across that, it's going to mirror that exactly. So if I wanted to work today on candidates that are in phone screen, no problem. There's a great question earlier about where people work from Mark. Typically for our customers that are on Workday, they'll stay in HiredScore for that top of funnel, middle of funnel process, and they'll go back in for things like background checks, offers, and certainly obviously all the onboarding and the other rich parts of the Workday HCM ecosystem that are part of the employee and candidate journey. So that's a basic overview of the applicant flow. I'm not going to get into every feature here, but there's some beautiful tools around filters that give extra information to recruiters. I did want to point out one of the features customers can leverage that they really value is our diversity insights. This is a fair and biased way for recruiters to be able to understand the breakdown of their inbox without knowing what Zach is, without knowing what Felicity is. We reattach that data at an aggregate to basically give a breakdown based on the country-specific diversity definitions to help recruiters understand how they, as they move across their inbox, what that sort of slate breakdown looks like. So again, it's not going to tell them what each person is, but it gives them an idea if they're on track or if certain filters they apply may cause an impact to the slate diversity. I wanted to focus on the other features.
This is awesome. Another great question from Jay that relates to what you were just talking about. Have you done any analysis on how often recruiters go outside of the A rating when selecting or hiring candidates?
All the time, Jay. We have some of our clients on the webinar as part of our packages. We go through reporting packages. We go through and look at that. And the good news is it's okay. We're in AI, so our job is to sort of get as close to what the human would have done on its own in a fair and ethical way, but we're not replacing the people. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of factors, the hiring manager, a recruiter, the actual candidate involved in the hiring process. So as I mentioned before, there could be reasons like they decide it's an employee referral and they decide to progress, or it's an internal and they're willing to overlook experience. I'm not going to get into all the details of that today, but just know that we provide ample reporting. We're looking at that constantly. And our customers, that the threshold they care about is, on average, is the grading deriving sort of the closest as a human would to the people they end up interviewing, offering, and that's what we call that sort of lift. So we're continually looking at that as part of the package that we deliver in our reporting back to customers. We take that very seriously. And obviously, if there's anywhere where the AI is off, they can give us feedback. It is an adaptive learning system. So if they decide to go ahead and status a candidate, the system will ongoing learn from that as well. So that's part of the feedback loop also.
And I think this is I think we might have typed to answer this question, but I'm going to hit you with one more, which is just, around the integration, like how does the integration work? Is it real time, between Workday and HiredScore, et cetera? Talk a little bit about that.
Great question, Tom. So it is 100% real time. Certainly Eileen can attest to that. There are certain APIs basically back and forth that, there could be a 30-second delay. But for instance, if I click on I showed you the candidate grade in Workday, that happens instantly the second candidate applies. So as soon as that API hits, we'll screen the candidate, we'll apply them against the job, and then we go ahead and put that grade into Workday. So that's essentially instantaneous. And then things like the bidirectional integration, you can see once I review Felicity, part of my goal here is to make sure, Eileen talked about recruiter productivity, right? So we want to get that data back into Workday and get the recruiter onto the next task. So the beauty of this is rather than going back and forth and swiveling between Workday and HiredScore, it's fully bi-directional. So we read the full BP. If there's rules and conditions, we mirror that. And so if, for instance, I want to move Felicity to hiring manager review and I click submit, if I were to go back into Workday within about 30 seconds, Felicity would be sitting in that hiring manager review step. So the recruiter doesn't have to go back into Workday to update that. As Eileen mentioned before, if they want to work in Workday, that's also okay. But a lot of recruiters will leverage this because of, again, that easy inbox feel. And then that full bi-directionally means that the data is always up to date in Workday. And also if they process the step changes in Workday, we'll mirror that as well. So it works both directions, Tom. The other beauty of it is if there's corresponding triggers, forms, emails that go out as a result of a status change, those all mirror exactly in Workday as if that action was taken in the system itself. Same with disposition codes. So now I'm in the hiring manager review. It's going to fully read the available dispositions that are sort of aligned to that stage as well. If I were to click do not proceed, it would go ahead and I presume send out an email at GM that notifies the candidate they've decided not to continue.
It's awesome. No, it's awesome. And, it's interesting because you mentioned earlier about the certified integration. That's a huge deal. If we look at related topic, contingent worker populations and Venly, that's part of the reason that Workday acquired Venly, because of that really amazing certified integration, right? And so it makes it just so much easier to make it make HiredScore part of your ecosystem, right? So
I love that call out, Tom, because we don't care about the sort of worker type. So as we start to think about employees, we start to think about contingent workers, this fully complements the Workday ecosystem. So if we want to pull contingent talent from Venly, no problem. If we want to pull passive workers from the Workday HCM, no problem. If customers turn on candidate engagement or talent optimization, there's additional data about employees. It's all fair game as part of this orchestration layer. We're focused on the use case today that Eileen highlighted, but there's a number of other complementing Workday use cases that we can look at as well.
Awesome.
Great. I did want to quickly show Fetch because that's one of the fun stories here, and then we will. I'll turn it back over to you to wrap up. Fetch is just the perfect complement to Spotlight because what it's doing is it's rediscovering candidates instantly. So the moment a rec is created, Tom, in Workday at GM, within seconds, a recruiter will have a lead list. Those lead lists are run even pre-rec postings.
Yeah,
So even posted. Status, right? Is that what you guys do, Eileen?
Yeah, before it's even posted, the fetch is already at work.
Yeah, so that means a recruiter can actually go into an intake session with Fetch leads, sit with a hiring manager and say, hey, I know you're asking for this. Here's an example of somebody applied 6 months ago. That's an exact match for this role. Again, we're pulling in harmonizing data from Workday, from the CRM tags. We identify the most recent status they got to in Workday when they were evaluated, what recruiter they talked to. So again, picking back up on Eileen's candidate experience. And then right on top of the system, they can go ahead and contact the lead, invite them to apply. That pulls them back into Workday on the right rec so that we're, again, reinforcing that data quality, that candidate journey. Compliance certainly is important as part of that posture as well. And so Fetch is really powerful. The cool part about Fetch is that these candidates on average are 10 times more likely to apply than any other passive lead, Tom, for one simple reason. They wanted to work at the company already. Yep. So they already know GM, they already like the company, and all we're doing is putting that back to work. As Eileen mentioned, 80% of the time, those candidates can be filled by, or jobs can be filled by people already in your database. So again, my job today isn't to go through every single feature of HiredScore, but to give an idea of how the functionality works. And then obviously, if folks are interested in learning more, I did just want to quickly mention two things, Tom. One is, as part of our partnership with Workday, we do have another upcoming webinar. Certainly, this one may not have wine involved. This is with the head of the EOC and the VP of Corporate Affairs from Workday and our fearless CEO, Athena Karp. This is an amazing webinar, so if anybody wants to grab the QR code, feel free to register there. And then if you want to learn more about HiredScore and we didn't get to your questions today, apologies, there's a lot of great ones. Feel free to email me at jason@HiredScore or grab the QR code there. And Tom, back over to you as we wrap up.
No, I love it. That was phenomenal. Did such a great job, so concise. we hit on almost all the questions. We either answered them live or we wrote answers. Really appreciate the engagement from the group. I will just pull up one slide, and then we're going to hit you with one last question, Jason, as I share this, just my email contact and talk about what's coming. We, as I shared, are teeing up sort of next year, and we're looking for presenters. So if you're interested in sharing more about what you're doing with Workday or what surrounds Workday, we would love for you to share with customers. The whole reason this was created, as I said at the beginning, and I'll restate it, was 3 years ago. I had some of our largest customers, most strategic customers at Workday say to me, "Hey, Tom, I want to hear from more large customers like me." And a lot of the webinars that your marketing team promotes, I like to joke, it's like Sophie and Tom's Gas and Sip on the corner of 5th and Main. Not to say that our wonderful company, Sophie, isn't great, but people really do want to hear from like-minded customers. And just the example of a million candidates and losing a lot of those before you put the solution in place. That's the kind of data that people want to hear, and they want to talk to customers like that. So we would love to hear from you. If you attended today and you think what you have to share is something worth sharing, please give me a call or shoot me a note at my email there. We'd love to have you present. A lot of customers love to do it as like a trial presentation before their Rising session, at either Rising or Mia Rising as well. We'd love to have you. Some of the sessions that we promoted here ended up having full rooms, 300, 500 people at Rising. So, even though they did it as a webinar first, it was super successful and gave them an opportunity to promote the topic on this forum as well. So last question, though, I'll hit you with, Jason, was just around, customizing or configuring diversity data. When you showed that earlier, is that configurable? Is that something that customers can individually configure?
Yeah, one important thing, thanks for asking that, Tom. We at HiredScore, as you can hear from our compliance and posture, that data is based on EO or similar form data that is captured typically during the application in Workday. So yes, it's fully configurable based on what data you're collecting and in which market. So ethnicity variations, for instance, will differ by market. Our definitions in America are different than definitions, and some countries aren't even capturing ethnicity. They might only be capturing gender, for instance. So it is a function of whether you're capturing, and HiredScore doesn't make any assumptions about what somebody might be. So it is a heuristic in a sense based on the self-ID data to give a sense of what's happening, sort of kind of like a real-time traffic report, if you will. But hopefully that answers the question. Great question.
Oh, that's perfect. And so just want to thank our presenters, Eileen from GM, Jason from HiredScore. You guys were awesome. I want to thank all the people that made time to be here today. I promise I'll have a great Cabernet or Napa wine the next time we meet. I want to thank Sophie for helping organize us. We love our customers. We do this for our customers and to have a little bit of fun, two of our great core values at Workday. Hope you have a wonderful end of your Workday Wednesday, and we'll talk to you next time.